It is hard now to conceive how groundbreaking this was. But this avant-garde strategy, the combination of colour and the commonplace, Paul Graham, along with a handful of other British photographers like Martin Parr and Anna Fox, transformed the black and white tradition that had dominated British art and documentary photography. The early 1980s was a revolutionary time for photography. Victor Bergin was introducing radical theoretical ideas in the study of photography at the Polytechnic of Central London, now our University of Westminster. Feminist photography and phototherapy were being forged. All this at a time when punk was a countercultural force in fashion and music, and photography students were out on the streets protesting about the cuts in education. Graham fed off such cultural shifts, and after seeing William Eggleston's catalogue, Election Eve, he knew the American photographer's elliptical, tangential approach, as well as his attraction to the seemingly mundane, was a route he himself would pursue. He worked in Ireland in 1984 to 86 to make Troubled Land, a study of the sectarian-marked landscape of Northern Ireland, then in Germany and back to Ireland for a study of the shadow of history in the burgeoning economic superstate in New York. He considered historical trauma and childish fantasy in Japan an empty heaven. Then, from the early 90s, it would be America in life he would continue to photograph, the hard, soft dichotomies of young people in End of an Age. Insights into social fracture in American Night in 2003, and most recently, his 12-volume work, A Shimmer of Possibility, which considers overlooked moments in today's USA. This last work won the prestigious Deutsche Börse Prize in 2009 and was exhibited in his solo show at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. He now teaches the master's program at Yale. His work has been compared, not least by Philip Lorca de Cortia, to that of Walker Evans, America's celebrated documentarist of the 1920s and 30s. And whilst their aesthetic is at first glance very different, they are united in their commitment to social issues, a desire to truly see their country and what is happening to the people who live there. Graham's genius is in part born of his ability to switch between photographic genre, to wholly change his strategy or approach to suit what he wishes to convey with each body of work. The vexing, fascinating, relentless questions that arise in discussions about where contemporary art, photography and documentary photography meet, reside in, and were to an extent born in, Paul Graham's astonishing work. In their attention to the disenfranchised, to the contingent, and not least to the sheer beauty of simply being alive, the graceful economy of his photographs has never been more relevant. Paul Graham.
Thank you. It's a great honour to accept this. But it is strange to be here amongst all these hard-earned degrees and doctorates, diplomas, and accepting this honour just for taking pictures. Don't get me wrong, it's a real honour, and what I'm very grateful for. It's simply that when you pause to think about it, it's being given for seeing, for looking at things and finding them interesting and worth remembering. And we all do that in a nutshell. That's what I do as a profession, if profession is the appropriate word. I read recently about a new theory of how the brain evolved from our optic nerve. If you think about what that means, our brains, our consciousness, our sense of self, followed from seeing. Sight before thought, sight before awareness, sight before sentience. Most of the best photographers out there probably could have told you this was true without any evolutionary research, and I would not disagree with them. Learn to trust your instincts, to trust that liquid intelligence, the same way that musicians do, that dancers do, that the best novelists do, to accept that your brain, suppose its center of your intelligence, often only catches on the importance of what intuition sensed much later. J.M. Coetzee, the great South African author, stated how a good writer learns to listen to his characters, to let go and allow them to take the story where they wish, not necessarily where the author originally intended. I'm not sure if I'm where my author intended me to be, but I'm happy to be here in this company, albeit in the insecure position familiar to most artists of not really knowing where the work came from, what it all adds up to, or if you're really responsible for it at all. That is both terrifying and a beautiful position to be in. If you're religious, it would affirm your belief in a God. If you're not, it makes you realize that we understand so little in this world, and how rationality, logic, and intelligence are only one side of what we know. Most of photography can boil down to one big question: how is the world? How is the world? The simplest and most difficult of questions. And stepping back from that, I find perhaps the common currency of my position here with all my fellow graduates, for we all ask a version of this question in our own fields. To be honest, at this moment, I'm not actually asking how is the world, I'm asking how in the world am I up here? And I have no idea how I ended up being a photographer, let alone one deserving of this honour. My mother swears it's some long-lost Armenian genes of a distant great-uncle, but who knows? I do know I'm humbled by this occasion, and that I stand on the shoulders of many people who went before me in photography and did great work for many decades. I thank them, I thank my family, my loved ones, and also know that right here, right now is the time not to ask questions of how the world is, but to accept how the world is. And that's what I'll do, and give great thanks to the university for this honour.